Hey there, everyone. So, as if you were watching the previous F of this, I'm going to start halfway through in this paper. I'm still going through the the Ethereum 2.0 economic review. This morning I tried. Yesterday I went through the economic summary and the introduction. This morning I tried to do a little video over the background and the framework for validating economic security, the framework they use in this paper. My puppy, Mika, needed to go out. So I got about 10 minutes in before I had to stop the stream and had to take her out. But I got through the general background of the paper, of like why the paper is important, the background of ETH 2.0 and stuff like that. We went through a general roadmap of ETH 2.0, and like the paper's talking about mainly phase 0, but it does lay out what phase 1 might look like in the timeline and what phase 2 might look like in the timeline. Then we dug into that a little deeper, and then we kind of we're going through right now 3 new concepts that you might have never heard before if you were focused on Ethereum 1. So the first one we went through was proof of stake. Then these 2 we didn't get through yet, so this is kind of where we're picking where we left off. My name's Chloethedev. Chloe, Chloethedev, whatever. Enjoy the paper review. Link for the paper should be in the comments or the bio, whatever of this video. So please feel free to read it on your own. This is just me, my ramblings, my rantings about the paper. I've been wanting to read it for a long time, so I'm going through it now. Economic finality. Whereas Ethereum today, like Bitcoin, relies on probabilistic finality, ETH 2.0 aims for a stronger economic guarantees around block finalization. Basically, when a block is final, it is final. No more of this reorg stuff from tons of blocks ago, creating some interesting forks. The idea is that if we can figure out actual finality, then that would be more secure because things can't be reorged beyond before that block. Economic finality is the idea that once a block is finalized, then the only way that at any point in the future the canonical history will contain a conflicting block is if a large number of people are willing to burn a very large amount of money. So I think that would require 2/3 of the network to basically say, which typically happens at epoch. In other words, once blocks are final, which happens at epoch n plus 2 in ETH 2.0, so 2 epochs past the original epoch, which we said epochs are, I think it said somewhere 30 to 16 minutes, or still 6.4 minutes. So after 2 epochs, you should get finality. I'm pretty sure. So after 12 and a half minutes, 13 minutes, you get finality. Basically, attacks, once you have finality, it's prohibitively expensive to revert from an attacker's standpoint. This has the effect of reducing the risk profile for most well-known attacks in proof of work. So proof of work, I guess, in my opinion, the most well-known attacks would require at least turning on some mining hardware and taking over the hash power. In Ethereum 2.0, you could attack easier or more easily by just buying the Ethereum to attack the network, but it would be noticeable. First of all, people would notice that you're buying up the network, and it would be hard to do it discreetly. But even if you did do it discreetly, and you got found out any point along the actual classable conditions, you could lose all the money you used. Whereas for mining, even if you try to attack the network, no one's going to confiscate your miners. So I'd say, yeah, it's just different. It also includes attack vectors centered around preventing and or delaying finality. Cool. It also introduces attack vectors. So yes, you reduce certain well-known attack vectors, but we're introducing potentially many new attack vectors, but at least some attack vectors surrounding. If you can delay finality, then maybe you could cause some issues in these kind of periods. Let's see, new ETH. So in phase 0, validators are required to lock up their ETH stakes until the merging of ETH 2.0 with the current Ethereum chain. All rewards generated are also locked until phase 2. This is kind of like the whole economic incentives versus opportunity cost lost. When accounts are introduced and the current Ethereum chain is merged in. As a result, this has the effect of segregating the ETH created on ETH2 from the ETH on the POW chain, the proof of work chain. The new ETH is thus non-transferable and not usable until phase 2. This dynamic creates strong incentives for a derivatives market around ETH2, which we expect will be not dominated by exchanges, which might not be, maybe not centralized exchanges, because with products like Rocket Pool coming out, potentially you could just have, a Uniswap pool with some RETH and ETH and NETH and ETH and RETH to NETH, and all of a sudden no one really needs a centralized exchange if they want to help support the network. A lot of this infrastructure is being built out right now. So yes, right now, if you wanted to do this, you would need to use a centralized exchange if you want to run your own node. But I'm hopefully testing out the Rocket Pool stuff today. It's almost 1. I have a meeting with Web3 Bridge, I'm pretty sure at 3. I got to double check that, either 2 or 3. And then maybe I'll do some Rocket Pool stuff right after that. Up here in my, I was doing some NIM stuff yesterday as well. So I got my beacon chain running on my Mac. So first time I've done that, I usually do it on my, on Linux, Debian or Ubuntu server or whatever. This is the first time I've done it on a Mac. It was very straightforward and very easy using Homebrew and all that. So it was easy. I'm hopefully going to dig into some stuff in my beacon node before I try and add another validator to it and stuff like that. But okay, lastly, it is important to note that phase 0 is introduced in parallel to the current Ethereum POW chain, commonly referred to the ETH1 chain. This means that any issuance on ETH2 is incremental to the ETH1 ether generated through POW mining. Yeah, so there's different issuances. So they're still going to have the issuance on ETH1 and have the issuance of ETH2, and then eventually those two will merge together. A lot of interesting stuff about that. So that was chapter 3, the background. I will quickly go through the framework, I guess, or a framework for evaluating economic security 3.0, chapter 4, and I'll probably end the video there and just have it be a really short one, going over those two chapters. So, a framework for evaluating economic security in ETH 2.0. Given the design goals of ETH2 outlined in the previous section, and with these new economic paradigms in mind, it is helpful to define a framework for evaluating economic security and risk in ETH2 as well as trade-offs against ETH1. Assumptions. ETH 2.0 is a highly complex and dynamic system. Sorry. Meek and I had a wonderful skate, but now I'm so tired and dehydrated, but it was really good. It's actually a sunny day today. It's not warm at all, 9 degrees or whatever like that, but it's sunny, which is nice. ETH2 is a highly complex and dynamic system. It is thus necessary and important to make assumptions around its behavior of actors in the system and the exogenous forces that can impact its security model. We assume that the majority of actors are economically rational. Probably a valid assumption. That is, that actors, particularly malicious actors, are motivated by personal economic gain. This is the only part I don't necessarily. I think assuming that most actors are going to be economically rational is reasonable. I think assuming that malicious actors are motivated by personal economic gain is a bit extreme. If you're a malicious actor, I feel like economic gain, even if that is the main motivation, is such a wide thing. If I take down Ethereum and all my ETH that I bought gets burned, but I was shorting Ethereum, then my personal economic gain might be larger. It would be hard to. But if the derivatives for Ethereum were 10x what they were off chain than they were on chain, and I could buy enough ETH very quickly to attack the network in a short period of time, and all my ETH got burned, which would increase the supply and weird stuff like that. But potentially I would attack the network so drastically that Ethereum as a network would become unstable, which would obviously decrease the value of Ethereum regardless of its supply. And then you could see how potentially within a short period of time, you could, if you had enough funds, like $1 billion, a huge amount of money, potentially if everything was interconnected, destroy a network, short the network, and then all of a sudden that economic personal gain is still there, which might not be rational if you're looking at within the network because you're burning all your ETH. But I think this economic personal gain could be anything. Like, I'm not motivated by economic personal gain, but I'm still motivated. And so as an individual, most malicious actors might be motivated by personal economic gain, but all you need is one malicious actor to be very powerful and not be motivated by this. And I think that you all of a sudden start seeing more holes in a lot of protocols, because a lot of protocols, when you read through their like assumptions, you're usually assuming that most people are economically rational or just like rational actors, which I think is I don't know, maybe because I'm not economically rational, I don't consider it to be as sound, but that's just me. That the security model of ETH 2.0 must be at least as secure in aggregate as that of ETH 1, very, very important. Given that Serenity is a network upgrade to ETH 1, so that makes sense. You're going to upgrade, you don't go backwards. That an attack refers to an attempt by a malicious attacker to corrupt, manipulate, or censor the beacon chain in phase 1 or one shard in phase 1 and beyond for the purpose of financial gain. So an attack in this network, again, they're assuming that an attack refers to a malicious attack for financial gain, but I still think there's this level of attack that isn't talked about a lot, where you don't even want to gain anything, you just want to hurt someone else. Like, it seems like it would be difficult to like take over someone's node and withdraw for them, like to get some money out of them, and that, either way, you can't withdraw till phase 2 anyways, so that makes sense. But if someone could take over my node and cause slashable conditions, well, they can cause my stake from go to 32 to 0, or 0, yeah. And so the issue is, in my opinion, that that's economic loss for me, which is a risk of me putting my money into the system, which that could be all the attacker wants, is to create risk, to create uncertainty, create some FUD, in the system. So it's interesting. With that in mind, you have to create some assumptions for every paper. And so, maybe for the next review of this paper, they could, add or adjust some of the assumptions. And so this is the first paper of this kind I've seen. So, you start with a set of assumptions, you write your paper based on the assumptions, and then, if I wanted to try and dig into other assumptions, I could, rewrite the paper or work on other certain parts of the paper. I wouldn't write this paper is very extensive, it seems like. So I'm eating some nuts. I don't know why I'm eating these nuts. They've been outside for like 3 days. That was not the best. That wasn't the best nut. On my counter, not outside. Hazelnut though. I'm so out of it. Less foggy in my brain than yesterday though. Yesterday was so hazy outside that I couldn't get through to it. With that in mind, we defined our required and sufficient level of economic security in ETH 2.0 as meeting the following true criteria. The cost of attack on the beacon chain must be equal or greater to the economic gain derived from the attack. Okay. The cost of attack on the beacon chain must be equal or greater than the cost of an equal or corresponding attack on the ETH1 chain. Makes sense. Yay, visualizing it in math is usually much easier than trying to think it out in my head. So, the cost of an attack on ETH2, right, must be greater than or equal to the profit. Okay. And the cost of an attack on ETH2 must be greater than or equal to the cost of an attack on ETH1. See, math? All of this, right? Garbage. Settled down into 2 lines. Super simple. Where the cost of an attack on ETH2 is, okay, yeah, sorry, that's just, that's just the legend. Oh, gosh. I'm not going to go through this stuff. You can go through that and read the paper on your own. This is just me ranting and raving. Again, if you think this stuff is pretty cool like I do, you should probably read through it on your own, but I will go through it all. Here. P is economic gain. Yeah, profit. The definition above suggests that security is dependent on the cost of attacking ETH2 being high. This cost itself is primarily dependent on 2 factors: the price multiplied with the quantity of ETH staked. Not just saying before how the security on ETH2 or the security of Ethereum is dependent on the price of Ethereum, especially for ETH 2.0. Price is dependent on money supply, velocity of money, and its market speculation. While a high inflationary system could have a serious impact on the price, this is not a primary concern in this case. As network inflation, including ETH1 inflation, is roughly 4 to 5%, and it is only set to decrease with time. So, high inflation could be an issue, but considering inflation is at 4.4 or 5% and is only planning on coming down, especially with EIP 1559 and different free market and all that stuff, potentially we could see this issuance come down. So I guess we're saying is if the paper is written for an issuance of 4 to 5%, then whatever the paper is written for should be more secure as issuance comes down. Velocity of money is difficult to extrapolate. However, as explored further in Section 8, we expect velocity to be lower with long-term holders. Velocity to be lower when long-term holders hold large quantities of ETH. Again, I'm not so sure this is 100% correct. I think with large quantities, of course, like if all your assets are in US dollars, you're not going to be moving all your US dollars. But if all your assets are in US dollars, the US dollar has a lot of velocity of money. There's lots of, it's not just sitting in someone's wallet. It's always transferring them around. So I expect what this means. So what I would assume, this is saying the more long-term holders hold ETH, the less that ETH changes hands, which creates upwards pressure on ETH. Yeah, I disagree with probably this whole thing. I'm not saying that if you have more holders, then you won't. I just don't necessarily agree with the fact that just because long-term, I think that's like more of a very big Bitcoin predominant. Like if long-term holders hold, price will go up. That I think is an assumption that is incorrect. It only takes one person to dump for the entire, I'm not sure I see. And then I know it says here, assuming demand remains high, but high relative to what? If issuance is going to keep going at 4 to 5% per year, demand would have to increase at least 4 to 5% a year. And the whole point of I would consider myself a long-term holder of ETH. I would consider the fact that I hold ETH because it's the only asset I really try and hold. Currently I'm doing some LPing of ETH and other things to help provide for the network. But ETH is like my main asset. But I'm not sure this part's correct, because if I'm building my entire life on Ethereum, I have bills. I got bills to pay. ETH's gonna have to change hands. And so I get the whole idea is if I have $1 million and 90% of my net was in ETH, but still if I have business expenses, I have cars and houses to buy. So again, I know that ETH is gas and you don't need if you have a lot of gas, you don't need it all. But ETH is also kind of money, and so I think forgetting the money side of ETH is where we can get into some issues with ETH 2.0. So the quantity of ETH staked is more directly influenced by the system's parameters and depends primarily on net validator yield and opportunity cost of that yield. As we measure later in this paper, the net validator yield is based on the gross yield or revenue yield cost of validating. The opportunity cost captures the notion that capital efficient, i.e., for example, economically incentivized validators, which I think to some degree is most people. You don't want to be losing money in your validator. Choosing to validate on ETH2 are making a risk-reward decision between ETH 2.0 staking and other ways to allocate their capital. For example, you can put your ETH into other DeFi products and stuff like that. I think for this, I don't see as much of an issue as well, or too much of an issue here, I should say, because I think that most people within the community will try and stake at least some of their capital, regardless of the rewards, regardless of the risk and reward. So, for example, on the Marma J Foundation account, I'm planning on staking a rocket pool node at first. So it only requires 16 ETH, and you kind of help the ecosystem in that way. You run a node and an ETH1 node and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of like the plan out for now, but that's not really for economic gain. It's just for supporting the network, supporting the community. And yes, of course, not losing money on my ETH and gaining more ETH is great. But again, I would also love to run a beacon node on my own. Maybe eventually, if I get 32 ETH over the next few months, to like that I could feel more risky with, like I might stake that. And of course, I might also put my ETH into other LP products and stuff like that. So there's going to be a wide variety, in my opinion, of asset classes that people put their ETH into or their funds into. But I feel like most individual, not most, but a lot of people in the community will be completely fine with being like, okay, at least I'll run a rocket pool node, at least I'll run a beacon chain to help out. Or I think we have a lot of altruistic people in the open source and blockchain Ethereum community in general. So I hope it's good. And I think a very important point above is that if you want the most secure network, it needs to be the most efficient. So I think that having a large set of altruistic nodes is very important when talking about a network. I think that relying on those altruistic nodes is not a good thing. I mean, not the most efficient way of doing things, but having them in your network, having nodes that will, validate proofs and stuff for free and not really worry about what's happening, and who won't just sign multiple, proofs just because they're there, but will actually check and make sure. I think having those nodes in any network or those types of people in any ecosystem is important. So yeah. Anyways. In section 10, we use the security framework above and run scenario analyses to determine how changes in key parameters as well as external shocks impact the security of the system. To understand the impact of these parameters, it is important to have an understanding of ETH 2.0's incentive system. And so I suppose that's why they're going to take us through next the economics of ETH 2.0. So that's going to be all for today's video. Again, I'm going to keep these very short. I mean, I say very short, but I don't know how long that was. What was that? Like 21 minutes. So yeah, the goal is for these to be about 10, 20 minutes of me going through different papers, recording myself going through it so that I can remember what I'm doing. And yeah, just keeping track of my learning journey, researching journey, and all that. So a lot of these papers are also in the Madasha Center. Oh, sorry, no, the ETH Learning Center in Cryptovoxels. So I will actually... Oops. Yeah, I'm looking up potentially buying a new Cryptovoxels parcel. Okay, let's see. I have the ETH Learning Center. It's going to take a while to load, but we're not trying to show it off right now. We're just trying to show where the papers are. There you go. ETH 2.0 economic review. Let's also move it over a little bit because there's no reason for it to be like right beside the other guy. There you go. So if you want to read this paper, you can also go to the Marmor J Foundation. You can pop into there, hit the ETH 2.0 economic review. It doesn't seem to want to work right now. I do want to make sure it works though. So there's the doc. Oh, it's the wrong paper. Perfect. I'm glad that I checked. There you go. So if you click the link, and I'm going to copy and paste this, and then we're going to go to Twitter, because, this is the type of stuff I don't mind showing off as much. Actually, I'm going to do it after. But I'm going to tweet it out so people can come see it. But yeah. Hope you might have learned something new or enjoyed this live stream in some way. Please read the actual paper if you find this interesting. But I will continue doing these little updates, reviews. I guess every couple days or so, Monday to Friday. Weekends I do other like musical or artistic live streams for myself. During the week I try and get to work, I suppose. But yeah, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are.